Hey guys, you're welcome to another episode. This time we're hearing the story of Aanu Jide-Ojo. She's a clinical psychologist and founder of USTherapy. You're about to hear how she find out.
Okay. Hi, I'm Anu. I'm Aanu Jide-Ojo, and I'm a clinical psychologist and the founder of USTherapy.
Hi guys, welcome to How I the series. How I is a collection of personal stories about how amazing individuals did something pivotal in your life or your career, or even with your personality. This is not an interview, guys. It is just a first-person account of your journey to getting something done, or even becoming something. With How I will hear different kinds of stories, some deep, some light, some funny, but all of them real, all of them unfiltered, and directly from the person with no interruptions. I hope you enjoy the stories. I promise they're amazing. I hope you enjoyed this. Watch, enjoy, subscribe. I'll see you.
Okay. Sometime at the tail end of my internship from my master's degree in clinical psychology, I was dead broke. I was like burnt out from school. I was just like, my bank account was pretty much at zero, and I knew that I needed to get a job to get life started. I had spent all my adulting, getting one degree or another. And at that time, I was writing. I wrote a lot of poetry, and I had an Instagram page where I would source art pieces, so to speak, put that at the post, and then write poetry as a caption. So it made my grid relatively pretty, and I was known more for writing than anything else. So my brother sent me this job opening for a social media manager at a salon here in Lagos. The salon still exists. And I went there with my Instagram page and I told them that, hey, I don't really know how to create social media content, so to speak, but I know how to write and I also know how to make hair. And somehow they bought it and they gave me my first job. So I came from Ibadan to Lagos. My parents didn't live on the island where the salon was located. But my friend's sister lived in Agungi then, and I asked her like, hey, can I room with you? And I don't have the rent money now, but I can pay you monthly until I cover the year's rent. And she said yes. She actually didn't even split it 50-50. I think she decided to do like a 60% her, 40% me, and that was just so graceful, of her. And I came in and got started working in social media management. It was tasking, it was a lot. I had to talk to a lot of people every day. There were bright lights everywhere, and it was very overwhelming. But I think from the jump, I was in survival mode. It was just a thing of get through the day, earn your salary, and get to the next one. I had not yet even defended my project then. I got the job and I told them that I would need to go back to school to do my defense. I think 2 days after I went back, did my defense, and that same day came back to Lagos from Ibadan. And it was like that. There was just a lot of surviving where I didn't really consider what I wanted. It was just like, this is what the job requires and show up. Now I'll be able to name that experience as like being burnt out, being tired, being anxious, being a lot of things. But at that time, I was just doing my job and being an employee. At the 8th month, I was getting antsy because it was just like, what is the next step? Where do I go from here? But thankfully, I got another job as a comms person in a food tech startup. It was an interesting role. I had to wear a lot of hats, and it was my first startup experience, so to speak. I was a writer, I was a photographer, I was a salesperson, I was a lot of things, and I was also the only woman in the organization, and I experienced like a level of bullying there, minor-ish, I guess, where they would like write emails to each other about me, and I'll hear snickering around, and I wouldn't really know what's going on. It was quite distressing, where it was just the boss that was kind of an ally, and one other person that was just badly behaved, but the other people it was just a weird space. I was there for about 8 months. And while I enjoyed the work a bit, I knew that I didn't like I knew I didn't like working in the organization, and for the most part, I felt stuck. One day, I got a call from a friend of a friend, and he was like, "Oh, hey, I'm taking on this role as the chief marketing officer in a fintech startup. we are going to put together like cool people. I love what you did here. I love your Instagram page, that blasted Instagram page. Anyway, and he was like, do you want to come in? To be honest, I didn't know what fintech was at the time, but I knew that I needed a change. So I said yes, and we had like the initial interview over dinner, and then I went into the office to interview for the company, and it was less of an interview and more of the CEO telling me what the company did, and he was just like, that was why I heard the interesting phrase banking the unbanked and all of the things that you hear like fintechs do, and I was still unsure what they were on about, but I was like, cool. This is a change. I need a change. Let's do it. It was on the mainland. I lived on the island. The commute was going to be disastrous, but I wanted to change my life, and I just wanted to get out of that rut I was in there. So starting April, I think, 2018, I started the commute from Chevron to Ikeja, and I do not recommend. 0/10. I was very exhausted. I'm not a morning person, 1. 2, I'm a huge introvert. 3, I hate Third Mainland Bridge. It's scary, it's just annoying. And from the jump, I had to do all 3 things every day, where I was working in marketing and I was moving from a place where there are about 10 people in the organization tops to like 200 people in the organization, and where an office meeting was typically like 2 to 3 people seated in an office to like, we're having a meeting and then like 20, 30 people from CEO to CFO to see something to all of this like coming in, and I felt so spotlighted every day. And from the jump, it was like I was thrown into the deep end, and my first task was to learn how to swim. I was told I was going to be like the online market merchant lead, and I didn't know what that was, but it sounded exciting. If they said I was going to like sell the product to like Instagram vendors, WhatsApp vendors, social media vendors, and like put together programs and all of that. I didn't do that during the course of of my work there. There were just a number of things that came up, as it happens when you're working in a startup. I had to travel a lot. I had to do a lot of admin work. And it was equal parts exciting, terrifying, overwhelming. And it was something. At that point, I started asking myself, like, what does life look like if you're not trying to survive? What does life look like if you're not just trying to earn a living? Because I knew that I didn't enjoy working there, because even the feats that we achieved, they'll say, oh, we got 2 million users today, and everybody will get excited, but I didn't feel like I had a buy-in, or I played a huge role in there, or it was something meaningful enough to me to feel like, oh yeah, I did that. It was more like, I'm happy you're happy, but that's okay. So one weird day that stands out to me was, I think the salary then was like 200K. And when I was told that the salary was 200K, that was like kind of good money. But one day I got paid, and I looked at my account and I actually burst into tears, because it was just like, this is not the payoff for being burnt out and being exhausted and just being this. It just didn't work. And there were a number of things that were happening within the organization there that just didn't make sense to me. It was not rare for someone to have like a crying fit, and they just come into the office and it's like, Aanu, and they just break down. And that is when conversations around like, what does mental health at work look like? Because we are just assuming that if you get paid, that should be enough. If you do enough team bonding thing, that should be enough. Interestingly, this organization also had like a coach that would come in to ask you like, oh, how are you feeling? What are you doing? All of that. But I don't know if anybody felt safe enough to confide in this person to actually create any sort of change. And I don't think that coach, the work the coach did actually translated to policies within the organization to actually make any sort of system-wide change. Anyway, 2018 was a very life-changing year. It was very exhausting, and there was always this hovering sense of feeling like a failure, because if an organization isn't designed for you to thrive if you're not thriving in the organization and a lot of your life is tied into work. If you're failing at that, you will feel like a failure everywhere, because I could count on my hands the number of times I go home before 10 p.m., the amount of weekends I had at home. I was always on the move at work, and I was still at the lower end of busyness in the organization. I still felt very unseen, still felt very, it was just something. At the end of the year, it was like, okay, this was a great year. I learned a lot, but I think I want to rest now. And I got offered a role in content marketing on the island, thankfully. So I carried my things and I started commuting from Chevron this time to Ikoyi. Still long, but it was okay. I know that in the past organization, a gift that company gave me was friends. That is when I actually started making friends at work, and that was pretty cool. I started working at the company in Ikoyi I worked there for about 4 months before they ran out of money, because again, startups, you run out of runway and they say, oh, we have to downsize, you have to work part-time and all. And the moment I heard that news, I was just like, who sent me? This company was telling me that, in 2019, you'll be able to do more and things will change, and you ran away. And it was like my friend read my mind, and when I told her about it, she called me and she was like, I know this is what you're thinking, but this is not it. It's like, you told yourself that you wanted to rest and you gave yourself rest. So forgive yourself and start figuring out what next steps will look like. And at that time, I now started asking myself, what if I actually, went back to using my degrees for something? I knew at the time, before then, I wasn't excited about using my degrees because when I was doing my internship, it was very dreary. I don't know if you've ever been to a neuropsychiatric hospital. It was very dreary. Some of the people that I saw that had been in the career for 10 years, 20 years, I was like, I don't know if I want to be you in 10 years. You're not really selling me on this career path. But while I had experienced burnout at work in the previous organization, and now I was asking for change and asking for something a bit more meaningful beyond getting paid, I started moving back slowly to working in mental health in one way or another, where someone tell me oh, I had a long day, and I'm like, I'm listening, what's going on? Now I would not do that because I don't work outside my working hours. But then I was just like, tell me, what would it actually feel like? And I started telling my friend, what would that look like? Does that mean that I failed in marketing? And that was something that I also carried from the last company. When I left, I felt like a failure. I felt a lot of shame. And it was so weird how I was scared to even network with my colleagues from the former company outside work hours, because it was just like, oh my God, don't see me. I was the one that failed at working here. Now I'm just like, that's so interesting. So anyway, started working in this place in Ikoyi, got laid off, yeah. And then I went to what was thankfully my last role, working in digital marketing. Now this place was weird because it was also a small organization, but it was like a boys' club kind of place. Another startup again. And there was a lot of work, and they hadn't yet defined what they wanted their product to look like. And I was coming from a place with at least a little bit more direction. So I will throw ideas out, and they're like, no, let's just stick to this. But we also want you to bring ideas, but we also want you to be innovative. And a lot of companies will throw this word innovative, ownership, all of these things, but it just wasn't working. At this place, because everything felt so abstract, and there was a very stark absence of community, unlike what I had in the previous organizations, then I felt so lonely, and it just felt like a final spiral. I remember calling a friend, and it was like, girl, it feels like these people are speaking math and I speak English. What is happening here? I'll leave the office like during my lunch hour and just like walk around, trying to figure it out, and just like have crying fits here and there. And I was just done. At this time, I knew that I definitely wanted to work as a clinical psychologist. I had started interning, doing volunteering rather, at the Mentally Aware Nigeria Initiative, and that was cool, but it was also not paying the bills. I was just like, how would it be if this work that I found meaningful enough to do for free, if it was my full-time job? And yeah, so I started working. So I was just there, and I think 3 months in, I told the HR person that I feel burnt out and I think I want to take a week off to just rest and collect myself. And she looked at me like, she was like, what does burnout mean? I was shocked because I feel like it's a red flag. It's a red flag if your HR person doesn't know what burnout means, by the way. She should know, or they should know. Anyway, I explained it to her. I said, this is what it means to be burnt out, and this is why I need a break. And she was like, you really can't take a break before 6 months into your work here. You have to be here for 6 months before you're entitled to your leave. And this is why people lie that their grandparents are dead and they need to like leave the office before they're given leave. But that's neither here nor there. She told me to speak to the CEO. I spoke to him and he thankfully agreed. During this time, I saw a job opening at TEARS, the Initiative for Equal Rights. And it was the perfect role. It was an NGO that I had followed for years. I loved the work that they were doing, and it was just very exciting seeing what they were up to. So when they put out a call for the clinical psychologist role, I was like, oh my God, this would be so cool. This would be so cool. This would be so cool. And then I had like a draft that I had written as for my school application for my doctorate, and I kind of sent that in as my cover letter, and I was waiting to get feedback from them. While I was applying for this break, somehow in between there, they shortlisted me for the interview, and I had the interview the next week, Tuesday. I did the interview. I was so nervous. Like, it was supposed to be a virtual interview. It wasn't even a video call or anything, but I was just like, everywhere needs to be arranged. Everything needs to be perfect. Nobody should say a word. It must just go great. And they're like, yes, got it. I know you'll be great. Then I jumped on a call with the ED, and she was like, hi, my name is Zina. And I was like, hi, Zina. And she's like, on the call with me is Lara. Hello, Lara. And she goes like, okay, are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. And from the first question was, are you a feminist? And I was like, yes. And they asked like questions after questions. And it was like, they had seen my CV and they had seen that I had the degrees for it, but now they were checking for value fit for the role, because it was a role that dealt with like special populations, and they wanted to know that it was someone that understood and shared the same vision that came in. And it was so cool hearing that, because again, I was coming from a place where I had been bullied in an all-men organization, and I'd experienced like burnout here and this there, and it was just so cool that from the jump, these people were very forward about their values. And she was like, okay, so you hear from us in 2, and said something after. I didn't know if it was 2 days or 2 weeks. So when 2 days passed, I was like, oh my God, I didn't hear from them. It's okay, it's cool, but it would be nice if it was 2 weeks. Though, what if it was 2 weeks and I'm just like waiting? I got back to the office that week after the break, and they told me to come in on a Thursday. I came in and they're like, Anu, we are going to have to let you go. I was devastated. Again, it wasn't a place I wanted to work in, but you don't want to get fired. It was just, and I had not heard from this company, so I was just terrified. Anyway, thankfully, the decision came with some money. So I was like, I mean, I'm not broke for the next month, so let's see how that goes. That was on a Thursday, exactly 1 week after I got hired at TEARS. and it was like one chapter closing and another chapter opening. While it was great to work at Tears, I still had a lot of shame around leaving my marketing career. It was just like, even if you left, it should have been with a bang, it should have been something, it should have been within your control, it should have been, there are a lot of shoots and stories showing up in my head that I didn't even update my LinkedIn page for months after. I was just like kind of shoving the shame down and just like throwing it away. I struggled with reconciling marketing and psychotherapy. It's like, how do I sell this? Because at the end of the day, I worked in marketing for about 3 years, so I understood storytelling, I understood like perception, I understood branding a bit. So it was just like, what do I do with it? LinkedIn was almost a trigger for me. It was just like, all people are doing like cool things and they can put their job in there, but like shame is just keeping me away from this role. But Tears was so affirming. One of the things that Zina did was allow me to design my office. And again, I'd come from spaces where like the lights were so bright to the point that I would have migraines, or shared spaces that I wouldn't have space to decompress. And as someone that was living with anxiety, is living with anxiety and is very introverted, I knew that I needed a space to decompress. I knew that I needed a safe space for my clients, and I knew that I needed like a space that I would feel very grounded in. So I started designing my office, and from the jump, that gave me a lot of ownership about it. The color on the wall, the smell of the space, the texture of the fabric, everything was so intentionally picked that the moment you walk in, you're just like, ah. And I was like, yes, this is my space. And it meant so much, you know, from a sensory standpoint, to be able to have that for myself, to be able to say like, this is my space and this is a place that I will thrive. This is what works for me, as opposed to what I think should work for me or what I should fit into. So I started working in Tears, and it was challenging in a lot of ways. This was 2019, and it was right before the pandemic. The work was so meaningful in the sense that for the first time, I wasn't just earning a living. I was combining meaning and, you know, value in my work. There were a lot of important conversations that were happening. There were a lot of people that I spoke to that it was just like, it's such an honor to be able to be a part of your journey, as opposed to like, today I earned my 2 naira, or I earned my 200 naira or something. There are moments where it would take a bit more time to decompress from my sessions, but it's like good stress, you know, it's not stress that it's like, I don't want to be here. It's like, I chose this, I wanted this, I prayed for this, and now I have this. Right. During that time, I also even created content, but it was like, now I'm educating people about their mental health. Great. I like this, not fintech. No shade to fintech, people love y'all. But it was just like, this is my space. And one day, in the middle of the pandemic, I was just like, I was on call with Peace actually, and I was talking about how it was terrifying facing the decision to switch from marketing to psychology, and how I had not even updated my page on LinkedIn. And she was like, open LinkedIn. I was like, okay. I was like, write your profile. And then I wrote it, and she's like, paste it on there, paste it. She's like, write a job. And I wrote it, I was like, paste it, and then paste it. And it was just like, okay, I did it, and I did not die. That's great. So it was something, and I guess that's the story of how I moved from marketing to clinical psychology. I worked in Tears for about 2 years, and in 2021, I wanted to do something more. I had a lot of stories about myself that I wasn't content with anymore. I told myself that I wasn't a public speaking person. I told myself that I was a shy person. And then if you ask anybody about me, they'll say like, oh, she's shy, she's not the type to do this, she's not the type to do this, she's not the type to do this. And a lot of things that were said about me were the things that I could not do or I did not do. And it was just like, why? So I started, as I started like easing out of those narrative one step at a time. I had a podcast called Sorry I Only Read Rom-Coms, where I talked about novels that I had read and sort of linked that to either mental health stories, kind of criticize them with some sort of lens that I found interesting. I think the highest number of people that listened to that podcast was like 36 people, but it was nice in how, one, I permitted myself to speak. And one of the things that I affirmed with myself every time was like, you're allowed to speak, you're allowed to speak, you're allowed to speak. And it wasn't something that I thought that I was allowed to do, because again, I wasn't the type to do public speaking. It also pushed me to push my own work, not just other people's work, where I would say, oh, have you listened to my podcast? Have you heard what I have to say? And it was just like affirming, like, what I have to say is important enough for you to listen. And it felt like a free fall, but it helped. And I did like a couple of episodes, and here and there people go like, oh my God, I love your podcast. And they'll write like episodes about it. And because I'm human, that affirmation meant everything. And from there, and I said, okay, if I'm going to like take this a bit further into my work, what would I talk about? What would I do? And in 2021, I opened like my company, like my now company's page called USTherapy. And I was just thinking, then I was thinking like, what name would I come up with? And it's just like, let it be like a collaboration between you and yourself, rather than you being against yourself or you speaking against yourself or whatever. So it was like, is it going to be We Therapy? And then We Therapy wasn't available, and USTherapy was just cool. And it was just like short and sweet. And I got started. And I just wanted to put content out about mental health that wasn't just like motivational quotes or, you know, affirmations. Even though affirmations are great and I use them, I wanted to actually educate people about what was going on. I know that in 2018, there was a lot of confusion about what I was experiencing. It wasn't until much later, when I allowed myself to slow down and ground myself, that I realized that I was dealing with so much anxiety. I was so overstimulated, and the system was too dysfunctional for the participants in that system to thrive in it. So I was like, we need to actually break this thing down and go beyond, oh, if you need someone to speak to, call me. If you need, you know, mental health day and all of that, is like, how can you get educated enough about your experience to the point that you know where to start? If you're going to speak to a psychotherapist, you kind of have a working idea. If you're going to do any sort of research, you have a working idea. It's like, can you know somewhere to start beyond call me if you need anything, or mental health days or something? So that's why I created USTherapy's page, and I started posting like one flyer after another. I started talking about stuff like core beliefs and cognitive distortions and all of these like sort of technical terms that we didn't really see a lot of people talking about. I wanted to create content that was useful, that would allow people navigate their journey in a more informed way beyond motivational speeches and affirmations, that would sort of educate them on what was going on in their inner world and all of the contributors to what they were experiencing. Because working at Tears, I knew that it wasn't just a matter of you as an individual experiencing depression. It's like your environment, your class, your sexuality, all of the things that make you up that contributes to it as well. So I wanted to like put that out there on social media and see that even if it gets to one person, they'll be able to understand their experience better. And it first started by writing text, then moving to videos, and then creating content like mental health, like Systemically Stuck, where I looked at the intersection of systemic issues and mental health at work specifically. So how does, say, hair impact your mental health at work? How does your body size impact your mental health at work? How does chronic illness impact your mental health at work? And these are all of the things that people don't really consider when creating policies. They just assume that when you come in, you should be good to go at the office. And a lot of organizations don't feel responsible enough to implement some of these things in their policies. And I guess I wanted to start that conversation. And for the most part, I think I did. For most of 2021, my focus was creating content around mental health at work. And towards the end of the year, I decided to expand it a bit more because I felt ready to start my private practice. And I knew that it wasn't just going to focus on mental health at work, even though that was like a key interest area for me for all of the reasons and all of my experiences so far. Then at the tail end of 2021, I was again curious about what I would do to earn a living, since I felt like it was time for me to go. While I enjoyed my work at Tears, I was also very burnt out because working in advocacy, working in an NGO can be very exhausting. You're facing a number of stories that you feel very helpless to, and there was a lot of compassion fatigue there, and it just felt like time to hand the baton over to someone else that was more energized and ready to take on that work, while I again continue to pursue rest in my work as well. So that combined with like a curiosity about tech, but this time from the point of view of like working in product management, there were a lot of like mental health apps coming out, and I was curious about like, who are the people designing this? Do they know what they're talking about? And how can I play a role in creating something that is useful for people that would actually include mental health professionals there? And how can I be a mental health professional that understands how these apps are created and developed and so on? So thankfully, I got an internship in January 2022 at a health tech startup, and I did a product management internship for about 6 months. It was very challenging, it was very interesting, it was very exciting. I was doing that while launching my private practice full-time, so it was like juggling 2 full-time jobs. And at the end of the internship, it was just like, do I want to continue in product management? For all of my career so far, I always had a full-time job and side hustles, a full-time job and side hustles. So I was used to that mindset, and I was also kind of used to seeing clinical psychology as something that may not necessarily pay off, because I live in Nigeria and we are still in the nascent awareness of mental health in Nigeria. So I was very terrified of diving in 2 feet in my private practice and just, relying on that solely as a source of income for me. But again, when I did my internship in product management, I enjoyed it. It was interesting, but I didn't want it. It answered the question, do you want to pursue a career in product management? And the answer was a big fat no. But this time, coming from a place of learning and how I experienced shame living my career in marketing, this time I was just like, I'm not going to have any shame about it. I had a question, I answered the question, and now I'm going to face my work in clinical psychology full-time. Whatever it is I would have hustled in product management, I would channel that energy in my private practice, and I'm going to have faith that it would bloom. So July 2022 was the month that I worked in my private practice full-time alone. It was very scary, it was very nerve-wracking, and there are days that I would sit up and just like, what am I doing? But here and there, with like partnerships here, affirmations there, clients coming in here and there, it worked. It's still a day-to-day work of, today I'm a clinical psychologist, tomorrow I'm a guest on a podcast, tomorrow I'm going live with someone else, next tomorrow I'm creating content, because it looks like the content life hasn't left me yet. But I'm wearing all of these hats to create something that I find meaningful. All my work now is designed to collaborate with people on their mental health journey, and that is so meaningful to me. I think that my work in marketing really emphasized what I valued, and it was quite interesting. In 2020, I started specializing in acceptance commitment therapy, And acceptance commitment therapy focuses a lot on like your values, on self-compassion, on acceptance for the most part, where you're not trying to say what if only, whatever. It's like, what is your reality? What do you want? What are you experiencing? What is the truth about your experience? And working on accepting that without shame. And that has been very rewarding for me. So now it's always great to say, hi, I'm Aanu Jide-Ojo, and I'm the founder and clinical psychologist at USTherapy. And that's my story.
Wow, that was amazing. Okay, I don't have a lot of questions, but the first one is your story has a lot of changing. I got tired of being in this place, I got tired of being in this place. What would you say was the one or two ingredients or quality or way of thinking that you have cultivated over time to be able to notice that this is not where you want to be and be able to take the plunge to then do something else?
A lot of it has to do with it's more abstract than anything else. It's more like, how do I feel here? Am I excited? Not just in the, is this job exciting and fascinating and all of that. Is like, does it contribute to a sense of meaning for me? Is there a value fit here? I think like those are questions I ask myself. I know that and then I do a lot of reflection. How I felt at the end of tears was like gratitude and exhaustion and readiness to go, compared to at the beginning where it was just like gratitude and excitement to stay and like do the work. There's always a sense of it is time to go. So it's very abstract. It's very sensory. It's like, how do I feel in my body about waking up and showing up in this place? How do I feel about going the extra mile? How do I feel about bringing up novel ideas? How do I feel about collaborating with people? How does this contribute to my general sense of meaning when it comes to my work? If there is no buy-in there, and if I find myself shutting down to the idea, shutting down to the space rather than opening up to show up there, then I just take it as a marker of it being time to move.
Interesting. What has been the most fun part? I mean, I think you talked about just being able to do what you want to do per day, create content, do your sessions. But what has been the hardest part or the thing that has shocked you most about now just doing entrepreneurship full time?
I think how temporary, what's the word now? Impermanent distress is when it shows up. When I'm worried about having like a low client list today, I can start like spiraling or brainstorming or worrying or talking to people and doing all of that work. Like, how can I boost this up? And then in the next 2 hours, my calendar is full for the week. And it's just always surprising how the things that I think will never change, the things that I think will never work, it's just like, wait, just wait. This is a temporal situation and it will pass. So whether it's thinking about how to make money, how to build my client list, how to create content, what does growth look like, all of that, I've learned to trust in change, in how like change can happen in a moment. So yeah, it's always very surprising when that happens.
Also, last question. If there's one thing you would want someone to take away from your story about how you have done marketing, then go to psychology, then to go into entrepreneurship full time, what would that be? because like the thread feels like you've changed your life many times. Every time someone felt uncomfortable. Um, but that's a nice story. Is there something you want? I'm not asking for an inspirational stuff. I'm just asking you. Like somebody hears your story, what do you want them to take away?
It's it will be chaotic, and it would have its turbulent moments, and it may take time, but it's also within your control to design your life. And you get to tell the story that you want told about yourself. So if the current story that you have about yourself isn't working for you, it's okay to change it. It's possible to change it. I think that's something that I still remind myself of daily, and it's something I'd like people to take away from this. Also, changes.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, what?
I wouldn't say that. I don't even know how to word this, but what feels like failure in a moment, it's in the long run, you may be grateful for it in the future.
Say that again.
How would I rephrase that? Like, what feels like failure in the moment, in the long run, you may be grateful for that moment happening, whether it's being fired or having to leave or shutting something down. We are taught we are always taught to be resilient and push through. And sometimes you also need to learn when to stop and reevaluate and accept, and then start again, even if it's like from the ground up. In the moment, it's not going to be comfortable. When I started my career in clinical psychology, I was joining a field where my colleagues had been in the space for 3 years, 4 years, and they had built a list, and it was literally starting from the ground up. It was very terrifying, but now I can tell the story of being fired without like folding into myself, because I'm grateful that I was let go from that place. I'm grateful that I left the place in 2018. I'm grateful for all the discomfort that brought me here. So if I'm going to be stuck in that moment, like, yeah, I cried then and it was overwhelming and it felt unending, but zoomed out now, I'm grateful for it, even when it felt like failure.
That's a great way to end this. Thank you so much, Aanu.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed hearing Anu's story of how she became a clinical psychologist and changed her career twice. It's such an amazing thing to see people who are able to reinvent themselves again and again and again and again and again and again. It was so beautiful for me to learn. It was so beautiful for me to hear, and I hope it was for you as well. Please make sure you don't leave this channel, you don't end this video without subscribing to my YouTube channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave some comments, and we can see that. And if you want, you can also reach out to her on USTherapy on Instagram or USTherapy.com on her website. Always always take care of your mental health. It's really good. If you want to feature on How I the Series, send an email to howitheseries@gmail.com, and follow me on PC Timmy on Twitter, Instagram to know when another episode drops. I'll see you. Shout out. Bye. I'll see you. Bye.